Reba turned to Van, her eyes narrowing. You set me up. The whole lucky speech. The as-is gamble. You knew all along. Van shrugged, a slow, guilty smile spreading across his face. Chapter 6. The Shadow of Two Names. Victory, Reba soon discovered, had a very specific scent: stale cigarette smoke and wet dog. That was the primary olfactory profile of the steel van had purchased. As they stood in the living room the following morning, the reality of their situation began to sink in. The walls were a shade of yellow that suggested the previous owners had been heavy smokers or very confused about interior design. The carpet felt like it was alive, and not in a friendly, Pixar movie kind of way. "Okay, Van," Reba said, snapping a pair of yellow rubber gloves onto her hands. "We have the house. We have the luck. Now we need the labor. If we want to flip this before the bubble bursts, we need to be out of here in 30 days. 30 days? Van scoffed, waving a crowbar around like a scepter. "Mrs. H, I was a linebacker. I can move walls. I can move mountains. A little wallpaper isn't going to stop the Montgomery Hart juggernaut." Suddenly, the front door creaked open, admitting a sliver of bright Texas sunshine and a man who looked like he had been manufactured in a factory that produced smugness and expensive teeth. "Well, well, well," the man said, his voice a smooth, oily drawl. "If it isn't the dynamic duo. And by dynamic, I mean desperate." Reba's spine stiffened. Davids, what are you doing here? Did you run out of other people's listings to exploit?" David stepped into the room, his Italian leather loafers clicking ominously on the hardwood floor that was currently covered in grime. "I heard you two actually bought this lemon. I'm here as a friend, Reba, a mentor, if you will." "I'd rather take advice from a bag of hammers," Reba snapped. "I'm serious," David said, leaning against a doorframe that looked suspiciously like it had wood rot. "This neighborhood is shifting. The froth is turning into a foam. I'll do you a favor. I'll take this off your hands right now. Full price of what you paid, plus $5,000 for your trouble. Consider it a failure insurance policy." Van stepped forward, the crowbar still in his hand. $5,000? You made 50 on the last one, Davy Two Names. You think we're that stupid?" David smiled, a slow, shark-like expression. "I think you're out of your league. Real estate isn't about heart, Reba. It's about cold, hard numbers. And these numbers, they don't look good for you. You've got 30 days before the interest on that bridge loan starts eating your soul. See you at the auction." He turned and strolled out, the sound of his Porsche idling in the driveway serving as a final insult. Reba looked at Van. The silence in the dusty room was heavy. "He's right about one thing," she whispered. "The clock is ticking." Chapter 7. The Hammer of Justice. The first week of renovation was a descent into a specific kind of hell. Reba, Van, and a very reluctant Cheyenne were the primary labor force. Van's approach to demolition was enthusiastic but unguided. He had managed to take down a non-load-bearing wall in 20 minutes, but he had also accidentally severed a water line that flooded the kitchen. "It's a water feature," Van shouted as he tried to plug the leak with his thumb. "It adds value. It's organic." Reba was currently balanced on a ladder, scraping 3 decades of popcorn ceiling off with a spatula. "Van, if you call one more disaster organic, I am going to bury you in the backyard and tell the police you were a natural fertilizer." Cheyenne was in the corner, wearing a designer face mask and gingerly painting a baseboard. "I don't see why we can't just hire people, Mom. This is ruining my manicure. And the smell? I think I'm developing a permanent allergy to 1,982. We can't hire people because we spent all the money on the down payment and the as-is closing costs." Reba grunted, a flake of ceiling landing in her hair. "Sweat equity. Cheyenne. That's what flips are made of." As the sun began to set, casting long, orange shadows through the bare windows, Brock pulled up in his SUV. He looked tired, but he was carrying several bags of fast food, the universal olive branch of the Hart family. "I brought sustenance," Brock announced, stepping over a pile of discarded drywall. "And news." "Is the news that you've decided to pay for a contractor?" Reba asked hopefully. "No, The news is that Barbara Jean has decided she is a visionary designer, Brock said with a sigh. She's been watching HGTV for 18 hours straight. She has a mood board. And Reba? It involves a lot of turquoise. Reba closed her eyes. Lord, give me the stones to survive this. Chapter 8. The Turquoise Temptation. Barbara Jean arrived the next morning like a whirlwind of ruffles and enthusiasm. She was carrying a stack of magazines and a paint fan that was 90% neon. Reba, honey, I have it, she squealed, hugging Reba and leaving a faint scent of lavender and desperation on her work shirt. The friendly, Texas aesthetic. We're going to make this house feel like a warm hug from a neighbor you actually like. Barbara Jean, Reba said slowly, trying to maintain her sanity. This is a flip. It needs to be neutral. Grays, whites, maybe a greige, if we're feeling spicy. We want people to see themselves here, not a hug from a stranger. Oh, Reba, you're so cynical, Barbara Jean said, spreading her magazines across a dusty countertop. Look at this. Boho chic Western Zen. It's the next big thing. We need a feature wall in the living room. Something bold. Something that says, I have a personality, and I'm not afraid to use it. Van walked in, covered in sawdust. I like bold. Bold is good. Is it as bold as putting a fork in a toaster? It's bolder, Van, Barbara Jean cried. It's turquoise dream. For the next 4 hours, Reba fought a losing battle against the turquoise tide. Every time she turned her back, Barbara Jean was pitching a whimsical light fixture or a tile pattern that looked like a kaleidoscope had an accident. But as Reba watched Barbara Jean work, watched the way she genuinely cared about making the space beautiful, she realized something. Barbara Jean wasn't just trying to design a house. She was trying to design a place where she belonged. Okay, Reba said, finally putting down her scraper. One feature wall, in the small bedroom. If the buyers hate it, we can paint over it in an hour. Barbara Jean's face lit up like a Christmas tree. Oh, Reba, you won't regret this. It's going to be a masterpiece. As Barbara Jean skipped off to the hardware store, Reba looked at Van. We are going to lose so much money, aren't we? Van put an arm around her, his dusty shoulder rubbing against hers. Maybe, but hey, at least we'll have stones. Turquoise ones. Epilogue. The Satellite's Goodbye. Revised. In the garage, Brock sat in the driver's seat of the SUV. He had found Barbara Jean's secret. He had listened to the tail end of her conversation with Hal. He didn't scream. He didn't yell. Instead, he opened the door and pulled her into a hug. I'm sorry, BJ. I haven't been paying attention. I'll go to the opera. I'll go to the ballet. I'll even stop and ask for directions. As they walked into the house, the car remained silent. Then, the Iconostar light flickered. Hello? Can someone help me? A voice cried out. It was Brock. He had accidentally locked the doors from the outside while the security system was engaged. Iconostar, this is Chrissy. A new, female voice answered. How can I help you? I'm locked in. Get me out of here. Are you the guy who gave Hal a hard time? Chrissy asked, her voice cold. No, Brock lied. Liar, Chrissy said, and the line went dead. In the end, everyone got what they deserved. Reba had her house, Van had his victory, and Brock, well, Brock was learning that, in a world of satellites and cell phones, you could never really hide from the truth. The Heart of a Survivor, a novel, based on the life of Reba Hart. Chapter 1. The Barbecue of Despair. The Houston sun was an oppressive weight, a humid blanket that smelled of charcoal, lighter fluid, and the faint, sweet scent of blooming jasmine. Reba Hart stood on her back porch, her hand shielded against the glare as she watched her ex-husband, Brock, flip a burger with the kind of practiced enthusiasm usually reserved for heart surgery. This was the 15th barbecue of the season, or maybe it just felt like it. In the world of the Harts, the lines between family time and organized chaos had long since blurred into a smear of suburban domesticity that Reba sometimes found harder to navigate than her divorce. I found you a man, Reba, Barbara Jean's voice chirped from the picnic table, cutting through the sizzle of meat. Barbara Jean, the woman who had replaced Reba as Brock's wife, was currently wearing a sun hat the size of a satellite dish and a smile that was dangerously sincere. Reba didn't turn around. She didn't need to. She could picture the exact shade of lipstick Barbara Jean was wearing. Barbara Jean, if this is another one of your fixer-uppers, I'm going to need you to reconsider our friendship. And by reconsider, I mean end it.